Всем привет.
Hi everyone.
Масштабненько тут у вас.
Well, what a
Вот,
large-scale
кстати, прикольно очень
event,
чувствуется сцена.
and I can feel
Надеюсь,
the stage very well.
буду рассказывать вам что-то хорошее,
I
интересное.
hope that I will
Вам
tell you
показали
something
QR-код.
very interesting.
Буду очень
You've
рада,
been
если
shown
вы
a QR
позадаете
code.
вопросы. Если не
If you
хотите задавать
ask
их
certain
в чат-бот,
questions,
меня
if
можно
you're
будет
reluctant
изловить
to ask a
и
question
задавать
on the
вопросы,
chat
если вдруг
box,
вы не хотите меня
you can
публично
find me and
унижать.
ask the
Вот,
question
поэтому
if you don't want to
думаю, можно
humiliate me
начинать.
publicly. I think that
Немножечко
we can
расскажу,
get
наверное, о
started.
том,
Let me tell
что
you
я вообще за
a
человек,
few
зачем
words
я
about
вообще
who
сюда
I
вышла.
am and
И,
why
наверное, попробую
I'm on the
возбудить у вас
stage, and
какой-то легкий
probably
интерес к моему докладу,
I
потому
will
что
try
кажется,
to
что
arouse some
тема
interest to
очень
my
полезная и
presentation because
очень
similarly,
нужная.
the topic is very useful and
Выглядит,
very
как будто бы я
interesting.
немножечко пришла сюда
It seems just
позаниматься
like
продажами application
I'm
security именно вам, но
selling
на самом
application
деле я
security
пришла
to
рассказать о
you,
том,
but in
вот какой был
essence,
у меня такой
I'm
интересный путь и
here in
поделиться
order to
немножко
tell you
опытом
about
того,
my interesting
что
journey
мы
to
делаем,
share
когда
what
к
we
нам
are
приходят
doing
наши клиенты и говорят:
when we are approached by
«Хочу
our clients and who
DevCops».
say,
То есть вот все,
I
хочу с этого
want
момента, чтобы приложения,
DevCops,
которые мы
so I
выпускаем,
want the
стали
applications that we are
качественными, да.
releasing now
Конечный потребитель
become
был безумно
more high
счастлив,
quality,
мы
that
были
the
в
end user
эксплуатации, спали
is happy,
спокойно, и
that we
вообще
are
вот мы
rich,
с
that we
тобой
sleep
ездили на
well,
Мальдивы
and
и
that's
кайфовали.
it. Going to the
Забавно,
Maldives and
что понимает это
enjoy our
изначально тот, кто к
life.
вам приходит. А вот с другими
And
департаментами
this is the
прям
one who approaches. You
очень
may
надо
realize
будет
that,
вам
but
помочь.
it's very difficult
Как
to get in touch
правило,
with other departments.
DevSecOps,
Usually,
методология
this
безопасной
comes
разработки,
as a
она нужна,
methodology
ну,
of safe and secure
разным
development,
направлениям, но чаще всего это,
is
конечно,
needed
все-таки либо
for many
безопасность,
departments, but most
либо
likely this is
лингвистика,
needed
например, из
by the
разработки.
security
Сейчас я вижу
department or
немножко,
someone from the
наверное, начинается
development.
перекос там в сторону того, что
I
ребята
think that
из
there is
цифровой
distortion
трансформации начинают
in
этим
the sense that
интересоваться.
people from
Но
digital
тут это все
transformation
скорее
are
связано с какими-то
interested in that,
программами
but most likely
цифровизации,
this
которые
is
вот, ну, в
related to
постсоветском пространстве очень, кстати,
digitalization
активно происходят.
programs. In the
И скоро
post-Soviet
мы
territory,
остаемся в
it has
ситуации,
become
что кто-то
widespread, and
один
nevertheless, we run into the situation
интересуется,
when
остальным
someone would
надо
be
рассказать,
interested in that,
зачем им
and
это тоже
others should be told
надо.
about why
Как
they need
выяснилось, за
that.
вот мой какой-то там
It
путь,
turned
карьеру,
out,
вроде я что-то хорошее
throughout my
поделала,
career, I did some
порассказывала, построила
positive
какие-то
and
платформочки,
useful
какие-то
things. I
процессики,
built some
команду даже
platforms, some
собрала, у меня отличная
processes.
команда, ребята прям
I've
вообще
even
обалденные.
assembled a
В общем,
company,
за наш путь мы столкнулись с тем, что каждый раз ты
and
приходишь
we
и
run into the
рассказываешь.
situation that
И
every
вот как будто
time
бы уже появился паттерн того,
y-
что именно мы
you
рассказываем.
see the same
Как
pattern
будто
as
бы
to what
фундиром
you
ты
are telling
говоришь
the people,
одно,
as if
операционщику говоришь другое.
you are saying one
И
thing
третье,
to the
ты будешь
operations
говорить, я не знаю, там,
department,
лиду
to the
девопсу.
CEO, another
Но
thing,
все это будет сводиться в то, что тебе,
but
блин,
it would
нужен AppSec. Если ты хочешь
actually
дальше
again
существовать,
result in the fact
быть
that you need an
рентабельным,
AppSec. If you want to
конкурентоспособным и
be
так далее,
profitable,
тебе
if you want to be
нужна
competitive,
безопасная разработка. То
you
есть, и
need
вот попробую
safe
вам сегодня
development.
рассказать, какие
And
поинты
let
можно
me tell
использовать и
you
что
what
раскручивать.
points can be used there.
Очень надеюсь вас здесь
And
не передержать, потому
I
что
hope
прям
that
очень больно быть тем человеком,
I will
который
not abuse
отвлекает вас
your
от вечернего какого-нибудь
attention
веселого,
because I'm
интересного
between
ужина.
you and some
Поэтому
evening party or
пойдем сразу
entertainment.
к основному. Вот это вот. Я, если вдруг,
So that's me.
вдруг кому-то интересно, сегодня буду вашим покорным
If you're
слугой,
interested
мне
in that,
можно
I
прям
will be
помочь
your
поспрашивать.
obedient servant, and you
И,
can ask any
собственно,
questions you
полезные
want,
ссылочки мне
and
везде
some
разрешили
links
подтыкать. Мы недавно сделали, кстати, из интересного
that you may
Википедию
use
по
out of
безопасной
something
разработке,
interesting. We
которая прям
actually
неплохо так
did a
наполнена.
wiki
На мой взгляд, это
article
прям клевый ресурс. Я
on
супер довольна.
development.
Мне
This is
нравится, что
a
в нее
great
контрибьютят,
resource.
что
I like it
ее
very
даже у
much
нас
and
недавно,
like to have it contributed
как-то,
too.
знаете, я бы была рада, если бы ее просто форкнули, но ее аж прям просто
And
скопировали
that
под
would
другим
be
именем на
great
GitHub
if
разместили. В целом
actually
мне
it'd been
окей.
replicated,
Главное,
but
чтобы,
it was
собственно, это
replicated
знание
on GitHub
множилось.
without
Какая-нибудь
any
мелкая просмотр мне в
reference.
целом не очень
I
важно.
don't care. I'm
Три
interested in
поинта.
having that
Что сегодня
data
обсудим?
replicated.
Где живет AppSec?
So 3 points where
Исторически,
AppSec
с
is
процентиками,
living.
да, вот из опыта.
So historically, with certain percentage points,
Где
etc.,
должен жить и быть application
where
security отдел.
application
Потом
security
поговорим о том, с
department
кем
has to be
дружить, как
located.
дружить.
Then we speak
Главное,
about
наверное,
how
еще
to make
зачем
friends,
дружить.
who to make friends
Ну
with,
и, собственно,
why
вот
to
и
make
самая
friends with,
важняшечка. Да, как
and
application security на самом деле умеет
how
решать
application
проблему
security
недостаточного
can solve
финансирования
the
внутри
problem
компании.
of
Это супер
insufficient
забавно, потому что я ни разу не экономист, я
funding.
вообще, знаете, такой
I'm not
человек,
an
который что-то
economist,
все чуть-чуть знает, везде все поверхностно, ну вот хожу вам
and
рассказываю.
this is
Поэтому
what I'm
начнем
telling you.
с того, где живет AppSec.
So let me tell
Вот
you
это,
where
наверное, три
AppSec
самых
is
классических
about.
зоны, где он
These are the
может
three
существовать.
most classical
AppSec у нас
zones where
может
it may
быть
exist.
у
It may be
CTO, то есть технического директора, у
with the
CISO, где-нибудь у директора по
CTO, with
безопасности, да,
COO,
подчинении, и
somewhere
у
next
директора
to
по
the
цифровой
CISO, and
трансформации. Кажется,
within
что
the
каждое из
digital
этих мест
transformation director.
абсолютно логично
Similarly,
для
each
того,
of
чтобы
these
application security специалист там
areas are logical
обитал.
enough for the
И это окей. такий.
AppSec specialists to leave. And that's good. I tried to resist to that idea, and I would be even ashamed if I do not consider that. I even have an article which stated that the only place for AppSec is within the cybersecurity department. It depends on the company itself. So if you did that within the IT technologies department, that's great. If it is done within the information security, it's great. It means that we are sticking to the same ideas, that we are sticking to the same approach, and that we are actually all stand up for mitigation of risks and against any threats. And this is an option that I like very much, because within digital transformation, there is a lot of space for application security. This is the right place to be, because when we introduce the safe and secure development, we speak about automation, acceleration of development, economy, and no manual work. All these points would be elaborated on a bit later, but once again, if your company, for instance, has a digital transformation department and you don't have AppSec, then you have to make sure that CDTO has a person responsible for AppSec. And the most interesting thing I noted, I saw that only once, but I have to admit that this is also another working scheme when AppSec is put into a parallel domain, and it is the level of CIO, CTO, and the AppSec director is at the same level. That's a great thing. If you manage to agree, probably the company's scale of 10,000 something developers, this will never happen. But in companies of less scale, this is another alternative. It may work. Now let's speak about how to put them around that big managerial table. These are the people who have some experience. I was lucky enough because C-level are the ones who are mastering hard skills and soft skills and who know how to manage. When any of them are interested in something, then others have to sell that idea, and they have to be convinced to support that idea. This is normal. This is something that we're doing on a regular basis. I had a very illustrative case when we arrived to a meeting, because we are dealing with consulting and we are helping others. And we were sitting around the table, and I'm showing some tables, trying to explain why they need that. And the CTO said, why you have not told us to invite the financial director? Because this is about money. And then I realized that this is the right message to facilitate that process. I was asked several times a question how to convince the people if they do not need anything. So they do not need anything because you failed to explain that right. And certainly, I'm not accusatory, but most likely you resulted to some your own problems, but you have to showcase the other people's problems, because always your own problems are closer to your heart. Yesterday we had a very good presentation about the viability and feasibility study of the AppSec, and I was asked, okay, all the calculations are done, but how do you find allies and friends? Where do you find them? Probably that's there. You can see your potential allies. Now, let us decompose these slides. Look, if you are not within the cybersecurity department and you have to sell AppSec, selling that to other people, what you can suggest to the cybersecurity director, in essence, CISO, control over some imperfections, and secondly, you would remove that from SOC, from his responsibility. It means that his people would be more relaxed because you would offer some more convenient options. Overall improvement of cyber hygiene, and it doesn't sound very well, but nevertheless, AppSec, this is about the methodology. This is not a kind of standalone process, which lasted for several months and is done. No, this is just the company moving to another paradigm, and it may take a lot of time. Anyway, we would improve the consciousness and awareness of people. Doesn't make sense to do AppSec if the people do not change passwords on their computers. And you can tell the CI still that you may help them change that, and you comply with the regulations. I cannot imagine a regulator which is not focusing on AppSec, and I like that very much. I like it that the companies are understanding that, and they even are acting proactively and decreasing the level of risk. It means that you would get some metrics that your risks in that specific case are minimum, that something may change because the criminals become smarter, but in that case you may say that everything is good there and everything is very safe to the extent it is possible. You can decrease the scope of the attack. You may do some updates. Some time ago, I worked within a customer. I remember all those audits that we had to do in order to get certified. And if I were approached then and told that, don't do that, we would do that instead of you, I would be happy. Okay, next. Something that makes me happy, we're speaking about matching and reconciling, because even several years ago, it was kind of people were measuring how competent they are to see who is more inferior, who is superior. The applications have to be released on time or even faster, because it would result in your bonus being paid. It would improve the loyalty of the developers to the company. Sometimes we tried that story. Let's make security champions, and 10 people per 10,000 people are involved, others are indifferent. When you roll it out everywhere, then it becomes very good, because the developers are intellectuals and they love to learn something new. You can engage some IT roles into release management. Sounds a sophisticated way, but in a nutshell, it is the following. Any person who is involved in the development and knows something about the security and the secure development may impact the way it all works in your company. Even BI, for instance, even Junkie specialist, if he is involved in that, he may impact such management, and it works very well with the people's motivation, because without people you cannot do anything. Again, you mitigate the risks, but we're speaking along the lines of some conventional imperfections. Some AppSec tools either can, or you can tune it to work against the conventional bugs. It is not that this is a vulnerable structure, but this is some excessive code. And AppSec may highlight that. Why not using that? I think that idea sounds good. You can engage people into managing the versions and documentaries. This is my pain from the last years, when I would be working for the customer. For instance, if the release is 4.2 and the latest documentation is 3.8. If I were to be a customer, I would be happy if the developers offer that to me. We can improve the competency of the people because they engaged in something new, and we are training them, and even more, they getting trained on their own. A lot would depend on the motivation, but this is also about the overall maturity of the company and of the people. If the people are knowledgeable about what they are doing, it is much better than only 50% of them understand what they are doing. Next, if you're not working in that direction, and CDSTO is responsible for the budget and may cut it or increase it, you can actually use a lot of factors, some justification. should be done in terms of the digital transformation because it would decrease the manual work. That's a fact. I'm ready to stand up for that. I'm ready to support that with the figures. And we don't have a 1 week long planning period, therefore we are planning for 5 years to come. So 5 years from now, you see that the manual work decreased dramatically because this is an automated methodology. If you fail, then probably something went wrong. In most cases, that would be the average figure. All in all, this is about more automation of the processes. I think that this is somewhere in your plans, and this is something that you would desire to do as a person, as an individual who wants to achieve something. This is about replication of practices. You can control what application and when is going to be automated, because application security is doing the planning what and when will become safe and secure within the company. For CDCO, this is another good story. It becomes more automated, so these things do not exist one without another. This is about hiring management. We decrease the manual work, we decrease the increase in the payroll. And for instance, you may say that we're not increasing the team because these are the options and they really work. And the simplest case is, for instance, you couldn't find an AppSec, or when us AppSec specialists were not sufficient enough in terms of the number, and we're not numerous. And you can replicate that within the development operations. And this is good for the CDTO. They like it, and I know anyone who would not like that. In a sense, I had an experience of working with super agile teams. And they would live in a cycle of flexible development, but which was not totally secure. And there was another quite interesting example when it was a very rigid waterfall. I hope that I would never say that word from the stage, and which is not the case. And certainly it would be painful, it would not come overnight, but this is very realistic, certainly if you engage security. And this is about creating new products. You have time for that because you no longer spend this time on something unnecessary. You do what you're supposed to do. The very idea of CDTO is to make sure that the company is push modern and digital. And financial director is associated with the chief operational director or executive because they would have the same scope of interests. Strange enough, but when we got prepared for the feasibility study return on investment, I remember that I made an appointment with our financial director and with the COE, Chief Operations Executive Officer. If we may save up a lot of money, the team doesn't have so many idle hours. I was told that the figures are not so huge, but I suggest that you download certain sheets and you would see how much was spent on certain corrections. I'm a person who did that myself, and I remember that we were restructuring the architecture again and again. I don't want to do that once again. Most likely no one wants that. We could spend those months on some excellent features and the clients would be happy because the button is now violet instead of yellow. And we would spend time and money on such silly things. Cutting costs on back office.
Пятое выступление за эти 2 дня.
This is the fifth my presentation within those 2 days, so I lose my voice. We're cutting costs on operations and back office. For instance, if you have 200 people, can you imagine? You would need 1 HR. If you have 2,000 people, you need more people in HR department. And you can judge by the companies where you have worked. You will see the same story. You always need people from back office who would help you, the administrators, HR specialists, recruiters, some support. This is the way we live. The less people we have, the less our back office costs. We decrease our operational costs. Because really, we are spending some money on licensing, on training, on consulting.
Но вы, в принципе, будете видеть, что они вам потом возвращаются.
But you would see
вот у меня вчера была великолепная жаркая дискуссия, которая мне
it would return. Yesterday I had a very heated discussion. And I was told that no,
опять же, я просто рекомендую
this is not the way it works. And I suggest that we start doing like that.
грубо говоря, не знаю, давно, куда там компания, да, моя приходила, что-то, не знаю, внедрила, мы потом можем прийти и посмотреть, насколько это реально повлияло на состояние.
And we have to see how it all impacted the business. I think that it really impacts the business.
Что вот прям финансовому директору очень понравится. Это финансовое планирование. Оно становится нормальным.
Financial planning becomes real and really sustainable because there are no stories like
CTO, да, вот из этого другого.
CTO, for instance, there asks for more money for the team and CFO asks for more money. And always you can find that. Yeah, but you never want that. You want to sleep well at night, understand that your plan may adjust for some time, but in essence, this is quite good. And this is the way you can appease your financial director. I admit that.
Ну и, собственно, наверное, для SEO это самый главный point.
And for the CEO, this is the most important thing.
Да, и ты как бы живешь в этой компании.
The company just work.
На самом деле, point максимально, ну вот прям примитивный, да. Я вот думала много тоже.
The most primitive point is that
откуда у него там, ну, как не знаю, убедить всех, и все пойдут убеждать.
Try to convince everyone, and everyone is going to
Дай нам денег, не знаю, дай нам время.
convince
Это нафиг не надо. Ну, то есть вот
giving
я
some
периодически
money,
привожу примеры из какого-нибудь там,
but
не знаю,
this is not
юриста или просто
needed.
там вот каких-нибудь курсов по project management у меня вот.
And for instance, I have some cases from project management.
Компания любая, что хочет, она хочет
Any
выжить.
company may do whatever it wants.
Но в первую очередь компания хочет выжить.
It wants to survive. This is the first thing they want to do. When, for instance, I do not know, any penalties are imposed by the regulator, or the company does some critical application, the company would not collapse because something is crushed. This is for you to understand.
Чуть-чуть поговорим про деньги.
Okay, let's speak about money.
Может быть, буду делать отсылку, если кто-то был у нас вчера на утреннем докладе, тоже вот в одном из бизнес-треков, но в любом случае...
I will make reference to our yesterday's report. Sorry if I repeat something. So the money is spent where? I love that statistics, and I try to use that in every my presentation because this is something that I want to tell you. Well, many say that it would increase my time by 3 hours. No.
Это статистика по...
No, this is the statistics on OSSRIA. It is being published every year, and in 2023 it was very deplorable, very regrettable, and you cannot find anyone where it won't be published. In 2024, another statistics was shown. It was even worse. So in 2024, we see another report. And most deplorable thing there is, well, vulnerabilities. About 80% of applications are with them, and nothing has changed. 75-80% of open source components are there, and so this is the same situation now. But at the same time, for instance, the code bases of critical level has changed. Before, when we would compare you to anyone else in 2017 and 2024, for instance, well, the number of hacks probably changed, but when we see that in those verified bases, the share of vulnerabilities of top notch is increasing so much. This is deplorable. So last year it was 48. This year it is more than 70. This is very poor statistics. And now, a few words about the correction costs. Let me showcase that. We take some average figures, and probably in yesterday report we have more optimistic figures. If you imagine such a paradigm when a library was not downloaded and we identified that immediately where, well, we would spend about 4 hours to fix that, probably less. And when we go to production with that, there is different statistics, and Google did its calculation, Caverity did its calculation, all the well-known companies that are dealing, at least somehow, with the safe development did calculations, and the figures range from 40, 1,000, etc. I would say that at every stage, we see doubling of the figures. For instance, if we were to somehow fix the vulnerability at the level of development, we would spend much less money. And sadly, probably it will not work with all the vulnerabilities, and probably you will not even notice that, but it doesn't mean that this is the right way to go. This doesn't work like, I don't see that, it means that it doesn't work. No. If you don't see that, probably someone else would see that, where otherwise it would be revealed by bug bounty or by pin test. And now a question about the money. So that's money. Again, a good report. We all forced that, we all checked that, and it is filled with formulas, but the most important one is on that slide. And we checked that in every detail yesterday. You can download it and see that in every detail. The guys from IBM Institute were from Economic Compact, from Forrester, they did calculation as how much it would cost in order to introduce the AppSec with all the tools, and how it may help you to return your investment. In my opinion, they show that very well, but this is a report from Forrester, so everything has to be very nice and clear. If you take NCLUB Ultimate and you complement that with all the paid features and tools, we would spend some time, but 6 months from now, we will return all those investments in a year's time. We would even earn good money. We didn't come up with such figures. We tried to show some good figures. And there is an AppSec department sitting over there. They would be happy if we show them these calculations. But it turned out that the company actually reaches break-even is year and a half. Certainly, we cannot show such figures, but we can guarantee. But while the AppSec development goes on like that, your time to market will not suffer. So for 3 months, it won't be painful. 6 months from now, it would be not so painful. And a year and a half from then, it will all be much better.
It's just a stage, a milestone to be attained. And a short story now to leave some time for questions. I like to joke using memes when people ask me, what do I do at work? I usually answer, I work with computers. But when we're talking about those milestones, the need to convince someone, to convince our counterpart that it's a quality measure. So I usually say that I sell it. This is why the title of my presentation is such. It may sound dull, but now I understand that there is nothing bad in it. It's just truth as it is. Sometimes we have to work on it when we need to attain our ends in the area of secure development. Okay. My recommendations or piece of advice. I came up with it not so long ago. I had been speaking to my peers, them saying there are so many companies now doing AppSec. What crossed my mind was, it may be cool now, all those ideas about how important it is have been promoted. Well, my key point, we heard a lot about people inviting auditors and then suffering due to those audits having been insufficient, or hire your AppSec experts, but do it based on their respective merits, not the company where they may have worked, but their personal merits, accomplishments. I know many people who have been in it much longer than I. Well, introducing a platform for 5 years with no success. Why? Okay, now to my conclusions. Oh, well, it's not my best skill, although I'll try anyway. And I mentioned it before. In any justification in regard to an application or not, use the arguments that the other side would like to hear or needs. Be empathic, or caring at least. Never say that you need it. Try to convince your counterpart that they need it. Well, I used to do it. It's my recommendation. So to me, it's no big deal. Try to do it. If you show interest in how much it may be, please demonstrate that you can count. Another pain point, getting back to all those forestry reports and others, I also mentioned IBM with Panimon. They also publish their vulnerability reports. Don't focus on vulnerability, on reputational risks. It's not easy. It's something elusive. Well, of course, you can come and say you will lose so much money. Don't do it. Count lost opportunity in terms of time and money. Well, I experienced situations where we would come and here you have 3 months, how much money do you need to implement this and that? Why doing that? Let's discuss security in terms of usefulness, in terms of efficiency. Let's achieve good results and let's try to achieve them gradually. If there are best practices, why don't we rely on them? And in most cases, you don't need up to 5 tools to have something introduced in 3 months. You will drown in all those reports and so forth. It's not a good practice. Well, I think it's good time for us to wrap up. If you have any questions, I'll gladly take them. However, I would hate to be the last person between yourselves and your Friday party. As far as I understand, there are questions. I'll try to take a couple of them.
Насколько правильным кажется постепенная трансформация AppSec-команды в команду
исследователей, которая занимается поиском багов,
gradual transformation
of your team into a team of researchers, outsourcing typical analysis to other stakeholders. Or karma is just regular routine. I suggest that you focus on something different. I like your wording, gradual transformation. Try to transform your team into a kind of center, replicating it internally into your development teams. Teach your developers to work with security tools. explain it to them. Well, invest in them, train them, introduce plugins, help them with all those reports, and then outsource it to them. And only in this case, you'll be able to see specific results. I have such an example where developers managed to come up with a system which can do AppSec in a perfect manner now. What tools should be used for secure development? Well, that's quite the vast question. Well, I'll consider two planes. There are free of charge and paid tools. Choose whatever you like. Just choose something. There are tools to analyze the code, to analyze the components, as well as to analyze the app behavior. Next, what amount can convince your stakeholders to pay for AppSec? Well, this might bring me to one of my slides. It's never about the amount. As to the maximal amount, it depends on what you want to reach, but we should proceed from common sense. It's not our objective to move the burden of debt on the shoulders of our company. Don't convince based on money, use other arguments. Of course, they can be also translated into money. People like talking in return on investment terms, and it can work. You can say, we're going to spend this amount, and this is what we will get back. And even this will be very specific. Well, we usually hire a team, buy tools. We have to mitigate risks, but sometimes and quite often, risk mitigation remains in the shadow. Well, sounds quite logical. I think it's going to be our last question, last but not least. Well, basically, we discussed it yesterday and pretty thoroughly. I'll be discussing it like this. Of course, we will slow down the development of features, but it will be accelerated later. If you do it right now, and there are formulas for that, and still proven. And we're not the only ones who use them. Let's take a feature from cybersecurity that we like. It increases the time to market by 4 times. However, in 4 months, it will return to the initial value, and then it will be increased by 2 times. As to licenses for tools, of course, they may be costly, but they are fixed assets. We will invest now, but in fact, those assets are auxiliary costs, and as a result, you get an optimized development process, and they'll be part of it. Well, I guess at this we can wrap up. Thank you for staying until the very end. And, well, I'd also like to say thank you to Luzhniki, and bye-bye, Luzhniki.